okay. We can go for 4 minutes also. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we got it. Yeah. Oh, I saw I'm on Facebook. This is what they are seeing right now. Countdown.
Yep.
Yeah. That's okay. Do you want me to put some music now? Couple, 2 minutes?
Can if you want.
Okay.
I'll turn up the volume.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome Christ the King and St. Stephen communities this afternoon. Our speaker today is Police Chief Brian Hill. I want to welcome you to our community today. Our people are really looking forward to listening to you. In 2018, the city manager, Catalano, said, "Since coming to the city, Brian has demonstrated exemplary and effective leadership as police captain and as interim police chief. He's an excellent communicator, is highly respected by the city staff and elected officials and by the community. Our community loves you because you came and talked with our community at a time of deepest need. And so tell us about yourself, your family, and your experience in Pleasant Hill.
Okay. If I could start though, Father, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here and have a conversation with you, and I'm glad that we'll be talking about important things today, and we can continue the conversations that you and I have already had with our communities even so, but thank you so much for that. So let me tell you a little bit about me as a person. I've been married to my wife for 29 years. We have 4 children between the ages of 28 and 10. So we got a big range there. My wife and I are from Antioch. We lived in Contra Costa County our entire lives. We now live on this side of the hill. A little bit about my career is I started in Antioch, where we grew up and worked there for a number of years, 8 to be exact, or just over 8. And then went to the Walnut Creek Police Department and worked there for 15 years before coming over to Pleasant Hill PD as a captain. So I've been here now as our chief for 2.5 years in that Walnut and in Pleasant Hill for 5 years, and I really consider this home. I'm so thankful to be here and to be in our community. I say this honestly, I love this community. It is great, and I'm sure you share my passion for Pleasant Hill.
Thank you. Yes, Pleasant Hill is an amazing community. I've been 6 years here now, but I was in Walnut Creek for 8 years, and that's an amazing place as well. There are many questions from our community, and more questions would come in. But the first question I'd like to ask you is, given all the controversy about police overstepping their bounds, do you think the police can still do their jobs?
I do, and the important part is that we stay focused on our mission. And that is our primary mission, has always been and remains, regardless of what is going on around us, is to serve our community and protect our community. So when we boil it down to something that simple, we can still do our jobs and do our jobs effectively. Can we improve? We can, and we will improve. But we need to really remember that and stay focused on that, and that will help us to do our jobs well, I think.
I just wanted to know on our Facebook, one of our parishioners has said, "Thank you for coming and sharing your perspective, Chief." So
very good.
They're listening. Yeah, for those of you who are listening to us today, we are interviewing the police chief of Pleasant Hill, Chief Brian Hill. There are many communities of faith in Pleasant Hill, and you have come here, you have addressed our people. What's your take on communities of faith? How do you look at Christ the King?
I think partnerships with our entire community is huge, and that includes our faith-based groups, because they are such a significant fabric of our community. When I talk about partnerships in community policing, I'm truly looking for us, our Pleasant Hill Police Department, to be an integral part of our community, right? Not just enforcers, but an integral part of our community. And when I think about partnerships, I think about how we can reduce crime together. We don't claim to have all the answers, but when we work together in partnerships, this is how we really get things done. These partnerships also build trust, and as we know, that is the fabric of being an effective police department and being able to provide the necessary services that we provide to our community. So partnerships throughout our community are huge, and we'll continue to try and develop those and increase our scope, and continue to participate in that.
I just wanted to know, Christ the King church and school appreciates the great service that the police officers do for us. We do have occasionally some issues, people just walking into our school grounds. And,
Sure.
and every time we have asked for help, it's been very prompt and you've been very, very supportive. So I want to say thank you to you and to your officers for always being available. What type of training and professional development are provided for Pleasant Hill Police Department officers? And what is the most demanding part of being a police officer today?
Professional training starts at the academy. There's a 6-month academy, and after that, an officer will come into the department and be paired up with a training officer for another 16 weeks, at least 16 weeks for ongoing, continuous 24/7 training when that officer is on. Then they go on, remain on probation for 18 months from there. But I think the important part to understand is training within our department is continuous and ongoing and very broad. So we certainly exceed all state mandates, or at least try to exceed state mandates. But our training really, I mean, if it's domestic violence, elder abuse, implicit bias, what you and I have talked about in the past, racial profiling, on and on, proper investigations, defensive tactics, dealing with the mentally ill, on and on and on. So it's truly nonstop. Our officers attend in-house training every other month. That's a 4 to 8 hour block, and then we send them out to advanced officer courses, or we host courses. Well, we used to host courses at our police department, but now we're still hosting courses virtually, where we're able to get multiple officers there.
There's a question: how many officers of color are there on the force? Who does the community relations training in Pleasant Hill?
So 26% of our police officers are of color, and that virtually mirrors our community, which is 27% folks of color. So we're not exact, but we're really close. And your other question, community outreach?
Yes, who does the training for you when it comes to community relations?
Yeah. We will usually, for whatever, that's a kind of a broad question, but that would be somebody from the outside. We don't have an internal trainer for that.
There was a question from one of our parishioners: does the Pleasant Hill police officers carry military assault rifles? Do they use military armored vehicles?
So we do not have military equipment from what is often referred to the 1033 program. That is where police departments obtain military equipment from surplus military equipment from the military. We do not have an armored vehicle, but our officers do carry AR-15 assault rifles. And so I think it's important people understand this is in recent years, we can all look at, unfortunately, way too many incidents where rifles have become the norm in mass casualty assaults. And we need to be able to respond appropriately to quickly eliminate threats and keep our community safe with the appropriate equipment. And this is what, unfortunately, in today's environment, a necessary piece of equipment. So we do have AR-15s. I think it's entirely appropriate. And while we don't have armored vehicles, we do have access, which is also very appropriate equipment, and because these are truly rescue vehicles. So I will also point you to any mass casualty event that we see all too often on TV, and you'll see an armored vehicle going in and escorting people out, and that's what these are truly used for. They also allow us to use safer tactics and approaches and such. And I won't go into that, but we don't, but I think they are appropriate.
Okay, thank you for that.
When used in the right context, of course.
Yeah. And we haven't had any major law enforcement problems like major shootings in Pleasant Hill of late, right? It's pretty safe city.
Mass casualties we have not.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. Of course, we have had homicides and
Okay.
such, but yes.
You know, when you have to go into a very challenging situation that you're talking about, what keeps you going? And what does your family think about your profession? I mean, are they worried? Are they fearful? I mean,
I think that's a question, unfortunately, for our officers today.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking to you, and
Yeah.
I have an office, and I'm generally not responding. But let me speak for, I think, our police officers in general, and something I love about them. And I am so grateful for them and their courage. Is, you said, what keeps them going? And when there are, these horrible incidents that may occur, officers have already made the choice to arrive at those incidents and to put their very lives, in danger, to put the lives of other people before their very own. I love that about our folks. I love that they're willing to do that. I love that they're training to do that, but they're willing to put the lives of other people before their own. Because they care, because they're truly showing up when they apply. They apply, the majority of them apply because they want to help people, because they want to be there and make a difference. And that's an unfortunate part of the job, but the fact that they're willing to do that for others, I find so honorable and noble. So,
my other
I
question.
would speak for them as
Yeah.
opposed to me. Yes, years ago I was in the same situation.
What about your family? Are they fearful? I hope Brian comes home today, and are they? What do they think about being here?
It is a very tough position. It's a very tough career for police officers, and they do worry about their loved ones. Very few professions, when somebody leaves to go to their job, do they have to worry about them not coming home. And unfortunately, police work is one of them. And so it is difficult on spouses, not just for that reason, but remember, this is a 24/7 profession. And police officers are working Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving and birthdays and everything else, right? And graveyard. And it certainly takes its toll. So it is difficult on families. One of the things that we have done is created a family support group to try and provide our families and loved ones with support that they need, and maybe resources that they need, or if it's even just coming together on occasion. But they're there, at least they're there.
We priests get called up in the middle of the night. Someone is seriously sick, and we just get up and go. I mean, it may be a stupid question, but do you get 8 hours of sleep non-stop, or are you awakened many times during the night?
I'm sorry, I had to apologize for it. I don't
I
think
said
I understood your question.
I mean, we priests, we are often called in the middle of the night because somebody is dying, or called from the hospital. But it doesn't happen every night.
Yes.
My question to you is, can you get an 8 hours sleep without interruption all through the week, or are you awakened at night?
I'm not being called frequently about
Yeah.
this situation
Yeah.
or that situation, and so do I have 8 hours uninterrupted sleep? Probably not, but it's not necessarily because of the phone calls that I'm receiving.
Yeah.
Maybe other things going through my head or
Yeah.
mind. But yes.
What many of us don't realize is the fact that police officers have a difficult job, and you guys are always on call and to step up, but we are grateful for keeping us safe. For those of you listening to us this evening, I'm talking to Police Chief Brian from the Pleasant Hill Police Department. If you have questions, feel free to send that to us. How do we avoid the situations where bad things happen on both sides of a protest, public and police department, how can we protest and still not provoke police?
Good question. Yeah, I really think that starts probably absolutely with communication. And so often when protests occur, the organizers will communicate with their local police department. And so we would encourage the same, so that we know what to expect, so we can make appropriate accommodations, so that we can provide for the safety of those who want to practice their First Amendment rights. And then I would say the other thing too is let your intentions be known during those pre-contacts. We plan to march down westbound or eastbound on Gregory, or whatever the intentions may be. We're going to stop here, or give speeches at this place. I think it's also important in today's day and age to know who is showing up and what their intentions are as we look at protests nationwide. And sometimes people are surprised by those showing up at their protests. So know who is coming and know what their intentions are, that they don't derail a really important message. My personal opinion is that sometimes real and important messages get lost in violence and destruction. And so, know who is showing up and what their intentions are. And then, of course, an important part of any protest is practice your First Amendment rights, but those can never go over the line into criminal activity, if destruction or violence or anything else. Those are not guaranteed, constitutional First Amendment rights.
There's a number of our parishioners are studying a book called White Fragility, and they are talking about police brutality and things that are happening on the streets. Part of the question you answered about a military grade equipments, but it's a question saying, do you really need military grade equipment in the interaction with crowd control today? And then what's your take on people when they say defund the police? Do you want to address that?
Sure. Military grade in terms of crowd control.
Yeah.
What would that be?
Tear gas, I don't know. Yeah.
So let's talk about tear gas, because I think that is an important topic today. Some would say that it should just be outright banned. I wouldn't agree with that because we know and seen all too frequently what starts as a peaceful protest evolves or devolves maybe into something less peaceful and more riotous. And in those situations where there's large crowds and large crowds involved in destructive, violent, and dangerous acts, responding police need to have the proper tools and equipment to ensure the safety of the entire community, right? Because those gatherings, either illegal or legal, illegal in this case if we're talking about violence and destructions and fires and other things, there needs to be a way to disperse those. Without tear gas, we really lose some of that, those tools, and then it puts the rest of our community in danger. So I think a hard line in the sand, always no, is probably not the best approach. Can we look at when and where and how it is deployed? Absolutely, and I think that's good. And I know those conversations are currently occurring at the state level, and certainly those will boil down to, and those will continue at our local level too.
We pastors had a meeting with the police department of Walnut Creek. I do have a church that is part of Walnut Creek City, St. Stephen's. And there was a major discussion many of us pastors had with the police chief and the city manager because of the recent violence there. What's your take on when you hear people, of course the meaning has got not changed into so many aspects defund the police or appropriate money accordingly to maybe taking care of mental ill or partnering with organizations? What do you?
Sure. Yeah, I think defunding police has a lot of different definitions, right? And so when I think of it, I think more of divert funds to, if you say, towards the mentally ill or stuff. And I'll just look and speak locally, and I would say there's not a whole lot in our local police department to be defunded. So our staffing hasn't increased substantially, except for by one police officer who was a school resource officer in the last 20 years or so. So we haven't grown with the changes in population, even though our population has remained pretty solid. Certainly our calls for service have increased, and the complexity of our calls for service and what our police officers are doing have increased, but we have remained the same, and I think we're continuing to provide good services. We also don't have a lot of peripheral programs and such that maybe other agencies and larger agencies might have. So of course we have patrol officers and detectives and motorcycle officers, traffic officers. We have a school resource officer and a community resource officer, and then dispatch services and such. And so I think we're very bare bones as it really is. So I would say we're really defunded probably as low as we're able to go without changing what services would look like, to our community today.
One of the challenges we have here at Christ the King is every once in a while there is a poor man, sometimes a homeless person moves around our campus, and they have their own challenges, and we are very understanding with that part. Because we have children around 300 children running around, people are very sensitive but we want to be as loving and charitable as we can be.
Yes.
My question to you, two things. First, if a call comes concerning the case of mental illness, who is assigned to handle it, a police officer or a social worker? And then I have a follow-up question after that. Yeah.
So today a police officer would show up. As you know, we work closely with CORE, and often those, you mentioned that maybe an unhoused person, you referred to them as a poor person. Yes, the would be a very poor person. But we work closely with CORE and try to get them to respond to the appropriate situations and the appropriate times. Now, if somebody's here on the campus of Christ the King, today we wouldn't, CORE is probably not going to show up, but we are looking at that. We're starting those conversations because I think those are entirely appropriate. That, I think, is parallel to some of those conversations of defunding the police. Can those funds be diverted to social workers or other service providers? And so, I think there are opportunities for those for others to provide services, to show up. But today, generally speaking, those services don't exist.
For those of you who are listening to us this evening, we are having a conversation with Chief Brian Hill from Pleasant Hill Police Department. A couple of years ago, the pastors of Pleasant Hill, we held a conversation with the captain, I forget his name now. He was there, and then there were a couple of council members, and we had a great conversation with especially the police captain about what we do and how we should approach. And so I just wanted to know, we have had conversations with the police from Pleasant Hill, and it has always been very, very rewarding for us. What advice would you have to me or to our school principal or teachers or some of our leaders? How do we deal with people who have mental illness, especially when they become a little more violent in terms of cursing and
Right.
yeah, what do we do?
I think the most important thing is to recognize it early, or one of the most important things are to recognize it early. What you don't want to do is wait until somebody is in crisis to have to call for assistance. Because when loved ones and family members wait until somebody is in crisis, that's usually when they're calling the police, right? And because things have boiled over and they're so bad. And I think if we can be, and loved ones and family members could be more proactive and try to get resources there appropriately and before the crisis occurs, that is going to prevent those from happening in the first place.
How do you de-escalate a situation? I mean, what advice do you have if the temper builds up and I want to de-escalate the situation? What would you say, or what would you do?
The best advice I could offer a family loved one is try to remove yourself from, if it's going to become a crisis situation, we'd ask you to remove yourself from the situation. That is, almost immediate de-escalation. When you have loved ones let's just call it in a home with a person in crisis, the opportunity for casualty and issues and unintended consequences raise significantly. And so if it comes to the point where the police need to be called, we ask you to remove yourself from the situation, remove yourself from the home, bring your cell phone with you, and let us know what is going on. Just leave your loved one there at home. Hopefully we can make contact over the phone. And to be quite honest, Father, often, a lot of times when it comes down to that situation, we kind of just walk away. And we let that person de-escalate themselves, because we don't want to provoke the situation by inserting ourselves needlessly, if the family members are removed, right? Inserting ourselves into the home, which sometimes escalates as opposed to de-escalate. So we'll try to speak over the phone, provide that person with resources, and if we can't get anywhere and there's nobody in the immediate vicinity, I'm talking about a home at this situation, we can often just kind of remove ourselves and walk away. It's very counterintuitive, to be quite honest with you, but more often than not, that person just kind of needs time to kind of come down, often to take their medications again, or talk to other loved ones and help them to de-escalate. So time is of a great resource in those situations.
There's a question about, there's somebody from our church says, thank you for your service, and our community is very appreciative. Black Lives Matter, it's a major thing today, Black Lives.
Sure.
Have you had many engagement with Black Lives Matter in Pleasant Hill, and what's your take on it?
My take on it is that's an important message, and I'm certainly trying to understand and trying to educate myself and our organization better all the time in regards to that. And I have said previously, and I'll say it again unequivocally, absolutely, of course, Black Lives Matter. Yes, Black Lives Matter very much. And we need to understand why that there is this big response now. And so we need to provide training for our officers, continual training for our officers, and be sensitive to these issues. And not take offense. I think often right now is people are one side or the other. And when I say absolutely Black Lives Matter, I mean it from my heart. That doesn't mean necessarily I agree with everything that the organization of Black Lives Matter says, because I don't, to be quite frank with you. But that's okay. I don't have to take offense. I don't have to feel threatened or anything else. I could appreciate the fact that Black Lives Matter and not necessarily agree with the organization that Black Lives Matter, but agree with the premise and try to make myself and our organization better.
And that's how I look at it too. Black Lives Matter as a sentiment to see that our brothers and sisters feel loved and respected more than what the organization stands for.
Yes.
Of course, there is a comment from one of our parishioners, Jennifer, who says people in a crisis or people who care about them can call 211 or text HOPE
Thank
to 20121.
Yep.
That's given to those who are following on Facebook. Let me turn to another topic. What challenges has COVID-19 caused towards being a police officer? What challenges have occurred within the police department? What are the successes and learning opportunities from this pandemic? And anything you have to say?
Yeah, I don't think we have time to discuss all the challenges of COVID-19, to be honest with you. That'd have to be another interview, but let me put it into a nutshell. It's one of the biggest challenges I think that we have faced as an organization. Of course, in recent months, it seems like we have an equally big challenge of a completely different nature, but COVID-19 required us to rethink really all of our procedures, how we delivered services. For the first time in the history of our department, we shut down our front lobby, and I talked about building relationships with our community. Well, we don't want to shut the lobby of our department. Many calls we stopped, responding to in terms of physically sending an officer, but we're taking a phone report. So we're having what traditionally for the 50-year history of our department, you would call and a police officer would show up at your door and you have a conversation face to face, like we are, albeit in excess of 6 feet. And that, is now or often was, handled over the phone. We sent employees home to work from home. And so we were concerned about and still are, and taking measures to mitigate and prevent our officers being infected from the community so that we could continue to provide services and ensure the safety of our community. But conversely, we don't want our officers to infect our community, right? And so we had to figure all this out, just like all of our police departments. I guess the consolation is the rest of the world was figuring out the same thing at the same time. I think the learning points is we learned that we can be efficient in a lot of the technologies that we weren't necessarily utilizing. We weren't doing Zoom meetings before, and it seemed something that we just couldn't or wouldn't do. I don't know that I knew about Zoom 6 months ago, right? And so, we're learning to utilize technology better. And I think as we continue to go forward, our ability to leverage technology is key to our success. When we look at crime in our community, we look at our efficiencies, I really believe technology plays and will continue to play a huge role in that, because we're not going to continue to increase our numbers. And so can we leverage technology to keep our community safe? And I think that is a key point. And COVID is an unfortunate reminder that we can really leverage technology in some really good ways.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Just some comments for those who are listening. Trained social workers should be called in as they are trained for this kind of work. These unhoused people are notoriously involved in criminal work. They are in need of mental support for their issues. You don't have to answer that. But
and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
And I don't either disagree with that.
Yeah, and we had people, and I have a great heart for these people.
Mm-hmm.
And I often carry sometimes some gift cards for groceries or things like that, and I just give them and I said, go and feed yourself and send them away. But it's a very difficult issue right now. I know we're going a little extra, if you don't mind, a few more minutes.
Yes, I'm all ears, Father.
All right, thank you so much. You can help us with this question. What is your response to the feeling of unease to police from our black communities and communities of color?
Yeah. It's concerning. It's disappointed that that is there, and I'm disappointed that it's a very real thing. And I think we as police officers and me as our police chief need to understand the history so that we could address that and be cognizant of that. And I think that we need to continue to train our people in terms of sensitivity training and cultural training. And then, at the same time, we need to build relationships the best that we possibly can with our community and those within our community of all races, to be honest with you, and ages and social economic statuses and such. And so I think that's an important part. The more we know each other, the better we understand each other, the better, hopefully, better those barriers are broken down.
Yeah. Another very positive one. What's your most inspirational story to date, being a police officer?
I don't think I could say in 1999 I was involved in this situation. I will tell you what inspires me, and I love being involved with men and women who are, as I already alluded to, devoting themselves to others, who signed up in this profession to help others and to do good, and ultimately to put the lives of other people before their own. I think that is lost in a lot of today's conversation. I think that's very unfortunate, because it's a very noble thing that our officers are doing 365 days a year, and that is serving our community. And so I love being involved with those individuals who want to serve in that way. There's so many different ways, to serve and to help others. And we have a group of men and women, both sworn and civilian, who have took an oath to serve our community, and I'm super proud of them. And I really love the profession, and I think that's the most inspirational thing that I find about this profession.
How can an ordinary citizen support the police today? An ordinary citizen, how can I support you, the police?
Sure. I think having these conversations, right? I think not even just as a police chief, but as just talking as a human right now. Unfortunately, I think that we, as a community right now, have lost the ability, or our ability has diminished to have discourse and conversations, because it seems that you land on one side or the other, and there's really no middle ground. And I think that's dangerous. I think that is not very good. But I think we are having these conversations. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Father, and others in our faith-based community and other groups have participated with us as a police department and our Civic Action Commission to have these conversations to better understand. I think it's become a bit cliche, as I've said before, to listen, but we really want to do that. We really want to listen, and maybe more importantly, we want to understand, because we want to understand how our community wants to be policed, and make those appropriate adjustments when it's appropriate, so we can provide the best services, for our community and keep our community safe. So it seems to be a lost art to have this civil discourse. Mm-hmm. And so if there's, challenging questions that you or others have offered, I'm not feeling challenged by it. I look at these as growth opportunities. It doesn't mean I agree with everything, nor does it mean that we're changing everything, because we have said, quite frankly, no, we can't do this because there's, safety issues, and that's part of transparency, is providing the answer no sometimes, and these are the reasons why. And so I think having, considering both sides is a great way to do that.
I have to tell you, and we're going to wind up this interview. We have a number of police officers in our school community and young officers, and they're very, very good role models. Good. And then you'll be amazed, at church level, we have ushers and greeters, and we have a ministry, and they basically collect money, but they're also at the back of the church responding to emergencies and things like that. And a number of our ushers are retired police officers. So we've been very blessed by current officers in our community, that's part of our community, as well as a number of retired police officers who are very, very involved and very supportive of our church. And we are very grateful for, I call it the ministry, the vocation of a police officer. I end with this question, but you can think about it maybe. When I was in Danville for a few years, I've gone a few times with the police, riding with them for 4 hours in the evening. As we ride along, they would share with us what's going on, and they have an opportunity to unload what is transpiring in their heart, because I'm a priest. And I've done it a few times, and they really explain to us what's happening in our community, because we see it face to face, because they stop someone, and they explain to you why they do it, or they call on a house call, and if it's a serious one, they would not let us in. Otherwise, they would take you in. Do you see any such possibilities? Do you welcome the support, the company of a pastor, a priest? Is it something that you want to think about, talk to your officers?
Yeah. And so, first of all, we love to have ride-alongs when there's not a pandemic. So we're not accepting ride-alongs now, of course, because we think it's important that people know their community, know what's happening in their community, and what better way to educate them than is to let them see, their community firsthand, and or maybe through the eyes of a police officer. Of course, we're not doing that now during the pandemic. But we had a chaplaincy program, and we are in the process, as we speak, of rebuilding that chaplaincy program. So I think it's a very important and integral part as we talk about the well-being of our employees and the well-being of our police officers. And this is an important thing, what we need to do. Providing for our officers is just the right thing to do. You do that as a leader. You do that because you care about your people. You want them to be healthy. We want them to be there for their families. We want them to have a long and successful and safe career. But also in doing that, we're helping them to provide better service, hopefully, to our community, right? And so when they are out on the street in a better, healthier place, both physically and mentally, we believe that they provide better service. So when we try to look out for the entire person, right? It's not just the bulletproof vests or the guns or physical fitness. That is all part of it in the training. But we are trying to deal with the individual as well, so that the end service is what our community expects, and that is really, hopefully, top notch.
Thank you, Police Chief Brian Hill, for being with us today. And I want to thank you again for the service that you render to our community. It's sometimes it's a thankless job, but I want you to know you have our support, our prayers. Every time we have services, very often we pray for our law enforcement, for your safety, for your families, and it's my prayer that through this conversation and our continued conversations, I'm looking forward as a pastor of a church to have continued conversations with other pastors and to work together to make this city safe and beautiful for everybody. But I want to thank you again. Thank you for being with us today. I'm grateful to Mike Hall, who is our cameraman today. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening. We do have the Mass at 5 p.m. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and if you'll keep those prayers coming, we would appreciate it.
Amen.
Thank you.